This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to another episode, a very special episode of Vet Candy's podcast in other news, a podcast that will expand your idea of what is impacting the veterinary world, veterinarians, and all animal care professionals as humans. I am your only host today. I'm Dr. Jen Chatfield, and if you're not yet a Vet Candy subscriber, I want to know why not, but please subscribe for free today at myvetcandy.com. You can also reach me at jen@myvetcandy.com if you just want to sound off, shout out, or just send me a lovely message. Our topic today is actually the food supply, commercial food animal stuff in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. We're going to say what's going on. And since Dr. Jason isn't here, I'm going to say in other news, we still have to eat during a pandemic? Yes, that's true. So first, let me explain to you guys. So, of course, like usual, I am coming to you from the closet in the cottage on the farm for my better audio. And Dr. Jason is absent. He is still in the basement, don't worry. But we have a lot of incredible guests today. And it's kind of a ladies' day. It is a ladies' day. And you may be thinking to yourself, but wait, I thought she said we were going to talk about commercial agriculture. And it's a ladies' day. That's right, people. That's right. The ladies are making sure that your food supply is safe. So we have some incredible women with us today. Let me introduce you all before we get too far into this, because we're going to have a rip-roaring convo all about what's going on in the food animal industry. So first we have Dr. Karen Grogan with us. Hey, Karen.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
And you guys might remember Dr. Karen also was with us on our podcast episode, The Rise of the Urban Chicken Continues. So she is, you might have guessed, a poultry expert, and she is a clinical associate professor. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, yes. At the University of Georgia.
University of Georgia.
Yep, in the Poultry.
The Poultry Diagnostic and Research Center.
There we go. Poultry. That's a mouthful. Poultry Diagnostic and Research Center.
All you have to know is Georgia is the #1 poultry producing state. So
that's a fun fact.
Fun fact.
All right. No pressure to my pork friends I'm about to introduce here. So we have the incredible Dr. Heather Fowler. Hey, Heather.
Hello.
Yes, so she's joining us, and she is the Director of Public Health and
Producer and Public Health.
Producer and Public Health. I knew I would get it. Producer, so many P's. The Director of Producer and Public Health for the National Pork Board. Yes. Excellent. Welcome. And I should say that Dr. Karen is coming to us from Georgia, and Dr. Heather is coming to us from New Jersey.
Yep, New Jersey. I work here in my remote office.
Okay, excellent. And also joining us, because it is an embarrassment of riches today, news hounds, the Candyverse is overwhelmed. We have Dr. Lisa Becton. Hey, Dr. Lisa.
Hello. How are you guys?
Great. And Lisa is the Director of Swine Health for the National Pork Board, yes?
That's correct.
Wonderful. And you're coming to us from?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. Excellent. But I should say for our listeners, just for the point of clarification, where is the headquarters for the National Pork Board?
Our main office is located in Des Moines, Iowa.
That's what I thought.
But Heather and I both get to work remotely in our different locations.
Especially right now, right? Like in the face of a pandemic, you guys do that routinely because I imagine you have a fair amount of travel, but with the pandemic. So we're going to talk about it. So the reason that I wanted to bring all of you together is not just because you're lovely ladies, but because of you have giant brains and incredible experience with food animal production. And everything in the news right now that I'm seeing is talking about our food supply. And of course, it's sensationalized. You know, the headlines are food supplies in danger. There's not going to be any chicken on the shelves. No pork. Like all kinds of stuff is being sensationalized. And in the Candyverse, we like to keep it real, right? Keep it 100%. So what's happening in y'all's world? Anybody, what's happening?
I can go first. I will say that there's not a shortage of supply. If anything, we're seeing disruptions along the supply chain because of the pandemic. because it's folks are calling out sick and, maybe being exposed and self-quarantining, we're seeing those breaks in that supply chain. So I think there's just a lot of confusion of, is there ample supply? There is. We just need to make sure that we're keeping people healthy at work so that they can make sure it gets to our grocery stores.
Right. And actually, I would say, and we'll come back around to this because there are many of us on this podcast right now who are very interested in preventing any transmission of pathogens from commercial ag workforce to the animals. And vice versa. And so in poultry, boy, there's just been a bunch of stuff going on in poultry too, right, Karen?
Correct. And I think to echo the same on the poultry side, we have plenty of supply.
Okay.
The problem is that a lot of our supply and contracts were destined for certain markets. They were destined for food service or restaurants or cruise ships, or they're very specific markets. Like you get into a contract, you're supplying Popeyes. Well, people aren't going to Popeyes in the numbers that they were going to Popeyes anymore. So then we have we have surplus chicken. Then you compound that by maybe there are areas where workers are getting sick. So then the plants are not running at full capacity. So our plants may be slowing down and maybe only running at 50% capacity. So we still have chickens that are at a certain age and they need to be processed.
Right.
And our current feedback is what I'm hearing is that companies are taking a proactive step and we have a shorter lifespan than say pigs.
Right.
They're choosing to cut back production by 20% by meaning they're just not setting the number of hatching eggs that will then get you an eventual broiler chicken to go to market.
Because that's much easier to manipulate when we talk about poultry, right? Because
absolutely,
you incubate the eggs or you break the eggs.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But with pork, with swine, Dr. Becton, it's not quite the same thing, right?
No, unfortunately it isn't. We all deal with the life cycle of an animal in production agriculture. And so what a lot of our producers are doing and us at the Pork Board are trying to assist with are looking at things like how can we slow growth rates? Can we use, different alternative ingredients so that they're not growing as fast?
Did you guys ever think when you went into commercial ag that you would be looking for ways to slow growth rates? Did you ever think that you'd be thinking?
I have to say this is really, truly an unprecedented time. I've been through a couple disease outbreaks, and I know Dr. Grogan has as with Dr. Fowler, but I don't think any of us saw this coming to this extent. And really all of the roaring down effects this has had, not just on agriculture, but on everyone. Yeah. So I don't think any of us could have foreseen this.
Not at all.
No. And in fact, back in January at Vet Candy, the Vet Candy family was together and we were shooting some videos and getting some good content out. And we had a conversation and I remember it crystal clear because at that point, I think the coronavirus had moved into Japan and the Japanese government had taken what was considered to be like this unprecedented step at the time, which is now just normal, and closed all of the schools. And so we were wondering, will that happen in the U.S.? And we're like, no. Here we are.
Exactly.
And I would never, would I have ever predicted that something like coronavirus would impact the food supply the way it has, and we have all this excess. And so, restaurants are closed. I haven't been out to eat. I get a drive-through. Right? I go through a drive-through because I just can't cook another night. Go through the drive-through, but I haven't been out to eat to have like a good steak,
right.
in weeks. And so,
well, a lot of places are still open. There's a huge movement of supporting local businesses. So here where I am in New Jersey, I try to see who's open and try to support those individuals just as a kind of good member of society, essentially.
Oh, yeah. No, my local, we have a local Mexican food place, and we used to go for breakfast a couple times a week. I still go pick up my breakfast taco. I just have to go inside to get it and stay 6 feet away from anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, look at the amount of time our schools have all been down. And that's, if you look at food supply, what is a huge consumer, who is a huge consumer of our products, of meat and poultry products.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think anybody would have ever figured this to happen for this length of time either. So it's both adults and children alike are really being impacted, and everybody is.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that it's not like there's fewer people eating. It's not like
the
all
way
of a
we're
sudden,
eating.
Right. It's the way we're eating it.
Yeah.
And where you're consuming it.
Yeah, where are you getting it from? What is it? And how are you consuming it? And all those kids, if you think about it, it's a massive number of kids that are fed every day in this country, breakfast, lunch, and a snack, after school through programs at school.
Yeah.
And so you have to wonder how that's having an impact on kids that may not have that available at home, right? They're food insecure. And so that just pains me because I know that's happening. And then I see a report that says that producers are having to just cull because they have excess, either they have excess production at their place and nowhere for it to go, no distribution mechanism because it would have ordinarily gone down one lane, or, they're destroying fresh produce. There's nowhere for it to go because restaurants aren't buying it, and that was their normal market. And so it goes back to what you mentioned, Dr. Grogan, about they're producing because they have a contract for a specific market. And that market goes away. So does the commercial ag industry not pivot quickly to kind of set up those other alternate distribution routes, or is it just not allowed in a contract, or what's happening with that?
At least from our side, what I have seen and what I understand is the way that the product goes out the door packaged is really the equipment in the processing plant, like what we call tray pack for poultry. Like, so when you go in, you buy a styrofoam tray of boneless, skinless thighs, it comes packaged out of the plant in that packaging, like with the Tyson or the Purdue or whatever label. Same for, I think, pork products. Like it comes out packaged with the brand name. And then for restaurant, it comes out in bulk boxes. Well, the plant that sends stuff out in a bulk packaging, like a 40-pound box, they do not have the equipment to go and put that in a tray pack to send it to a grocery store.
That makes sense. Is it
what
the same
would have to happen is that grocery store retail establishments would have to buy the bulk box and then tray pack.
Repackage it.
Repackage.
Okay. And is it the same on the pork side too?
A lot of that does happen, yes. And as far as contracts, producers have set amounts of animals that go to a set packer each and every week, and that is something that's set up in their contract. And so when that gets disrupted, producers only have so much flex in their ability to do things with those animals. So, we're looking at every available option to try to hold on to animals, to take advantage of that production before we've got to really become and look at dire circumstances, such as removal from a herd. But people are being, very creative. We're looking at trying to engage more local lockers, looking at, having reefer trailers, big truck trailer sales of these products, just like Dr. Grogan was saying, just to be able to keep that product moving. But the biggest challenge, as like Dr. Fowler said, is just having the labor force to be able to process the animals themselves.
And that's because they're testing positive, or they're being, having a quarantine issue issued. Is that right? Like that's impacting the labor force that would be able to help provide a little more flexibility maybe for that. That's that impact that's happening, right?
Yes. So we're seeing, just like we're seeing nationwide, and we have certain areas that have higher incidence than others, we're just seeing, just lots of transmission. And it's not always at work. So we realize that it can be an occupational risk. I'm using air quotes, but this is audio.
It's okay.
So at work, you can be exposed to coworkers potentially, but you're also exposed when you go home. And, whether it's someone in your household has it, you have a visitor, you go out and you're at the grocery store, you just to pick up your meds from the pharmacy, you can be exposed too. So just given the nature of this disease makes it really, really hard. And it's really impacting us, across all industries.
Yeah. So, what I wonder too is because, the news hounds know my love for infectious disease. And I just wonder, because, when in my limited experience, biosecurity is a big stinking deal in commercial ag production, right? And so if you're processing meat, you've got on PPE. Like PPE is not a new thing for people who work in commercial ag. And so I think it's a good point that you make, Dr. Fowler, that perhaps the folks who work in those plants or work at those farms, we have to remember they're humans, and they go to the grocery store, they go to the movies, they have a life outside the farm. I hope they do. They have a life outside the farm. And so that human-to-human transmission, community transmission that we're seeing, we don't need to panic, because I mean, I would guess it's unlikely that they're picking up this disease at work because they wear PPE at work. I guess it's possible because anything's possible, but it's more likely they're picking it up out in the community. Would you think?
I'm not entirely sure. I can tell you, and I'm sure all the folks know that CDC has guidelines on for every situation. It's like you go to the park and at your job and over here and over there. And I think it's great that they've been putting out those guidances because we do have to be conscious in all areas. But as you said, they recently released guidance for meat packers and processors. Right. So what to do, like how to really adapt their workplace environment. A lot of places have already put into place these rules, but I think it gave some really good guidance. And again, on top of what they've said for other workplaces in general and at home, because a lot of what, at least here in New Jersey, we're hearing about kind of family. I keep me in the rabbit ears.
I know. You guys, like, if you guys could see her talk, like she's saying 6,000 times more because she's talking with her hands.
It's the Jersey girl in me. But
that's
we're
right.
seeing tons of family clusters, right? So what is it? Was it Andrew Cuomo, I want to say? He had it, and then his wife had it, but he was reporting from his basement. So he did try to like separate himself, but
you can't.
It's hard. And so again, there's guidance out there about how to clean and disinfect. Just given the nature of the disease, it can be really tough. We're seeing transmission in all places, but we're trying to definitely minimize them at work.
And I'm not so sure that we should hang it up on disinfection because we know that this is an enveloped virus, right? And the Candyverse is aware. And if you've forgotten, go back and listen to those podcast episodes when we had Dr. Whitaker on. It's an envelope virus. It's not incredibly hardy in the environment. It's it's mostly human to human transmission, but it's because you're asymptomatic. You have no outward symptoms and you can be shedding it, I think is the real issue. So even if you're Lysoling the crap out of everything, as soon as someone gets sick in your household, the horse may already be out of the barn. Can I use that pun? Like, we don't have any equine people on, but
and even with symptomatic cases, the thought is that you start shedding at least 48 hours before onset.
Yeah, exactly. Like influenza. So and so I guess the other thing that I want to make sure and say is that the CDC and you guys, because this is your job, you're not concerned that folks working in the food supply chain are going to get this disease from exposure to their work product, from the meat they're processing, or from whatever. You're concerned that they're going to get the disease from their coworkers, really. That's what you're concerned about.
Correct.
Yes, they're all nodding their heads, people.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. That to me is really something I think your listeners need to understand is our food supply is safe. You are not going to get this from eating beef, pork, chicken, the vegetables that you get. The virus is not going to be there. It is from an interaction that you have with a person. And to me, our plants understand sanitation and cleanliness. They are clean. So we know the methods to put in place. The problem is that in some of the processes that go on, having 6 feet of distance isn't really doable.
Reasonable. Yeah.
So in a lot of plants, they've put in some type of partition. They are providing workers with PPE. So they are we're basically mitigating risk. That's all this is about for all of us. All of these measures CDC is putting out, we're trying to mitigate risk. So that is the biggest reassurance, is that we have the safest food supply and things are very clean. And this is just one more hurdle that we have to get over. And, I think we will see as virus transmission changes among populations of people, you will see it hit other areas. We haven't really seen certain chicken plants have employee impacts as great as other industries, but that doesn't mean 2 weeks from now it won't happen. As the virus starts to move to different states, it's going to change its dynamic. So.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. If you're ever concerned about, disease from the food supply chain, hey, Aunt Jen's tip, cook the crap out of it. Right?
And wash your hands.
And wash your hands.
145 for pork, please.
Right. See, there you go.
No,
Like,
you don't have to cook it too much.
I mean, but if you're scared, when in doubt, burn it. Right?
No,
That's what we say.
no,
Burn
have an
it.
unpleasant eating experience, and we do
Look,
not.
man, I didn't say you had to worry
No.
about taste or a culinary experience, Dr. Fowler. Right? I'm
care.
saying, if you're,
I care about your experience.
I think we have a couple of foodies on with us, right? So I know Karen's a foodie.
Oh, yeah.
I think Heather's a foodie. I don't know, Dr. Lisa, if you're a foodie or not. Yeah, she is.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my God, I'm surrounded.
You're surrounded.
I am the one that eats like a truck driver, and I am surrounded by foodies. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about other diseases that are ongoing that have complicated the food supply industry, and then we're going to play a game with our guests, and it'll be fun. It'll be good times. So hang with us. We'll pay some bills. We'll be right back on the other side.
Vet Candy makes your life easier with scientific news, clinical updates, and expert lifestyle tips. Sign up for free at myvetcandy.com and start making your life sweeter.
Begging to hear more of your favorite show? Full episodes of all our shows are available on demand. Go to PetLifeRadio.com to fetch our entire lineup of Possum Pet podcasts. Also, dig us up in iHeartRadio and iTunes. Let's talk pets. Live and on demand, only from Pet Life Radio.
Okay, welcome back, where we have the dream team of ladies keeping the food supply safe. And we're talking about COVID-19 and how it is having this kind of unpredicted and unprecedented, that was a great way to describe it, Dr. Becton earlier, impact on the food supply as far as poultry and pork. And so we have experts here. So I want to talk about something else because, nothing happens in a vacuum. And I mean, there's all kinds of diseases. The news hounds, the Candyverse is well aware of different diseases that can impact food supply. So there's other stuff going on. African swine fever, which we had a great podcast episode on, is still ongoing, right? It's not like they're only one disease at a time, right?
Right. Yeah, and fortunately for us in the United States and really in North America, we're not seeing that here. It's been a big, big problem overseas, especially in the different Asian countries and even in Europe where it's in the wild boar population. But I shouldn't even say it, but for right now, we have not ever had a diagnosis of African swine fever in the United States.
Right. Do you guys hear that, Candyverse? That's Dr. Becton knocking super hard on a piece of wood right now. Because we don't want to have it.
No, and that's why, we rely and work with our producers and everybody else that's involved in ag, from USDA to our state vets, to do everything we can to make sure that we don't and prevent it from happening. And I know on the poultry side, they do the same thing for their diseases too.
And so you would have I would have thought, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, with African swine fever hitting in China, because China has the largest pig population, right, in the world. But African swine fever's wiped out a significant part of that. And so they need pork, but we have pork. But did we immediately export a bunch in the face of COVID and everything else, or did they shut the importation off?
We've been coming off of a trying time for the last several years just because of trade restrictions and policies and things that I'm not even going to get into. But it's not been an easy road for producers because of those things. However, in the last several months, even prior to COVID, we did have an opening up of our export markets, and we're shipping product to China, and we are still doing that now. However, the volume to get things out is still, we're hindered by our ability to harvest pigs, to be able to get them into slaughter, to process them, and then ship those carcasses overseas. So
and that's that
while it's still going on,
that labor force impact that Dr. Fowler was talking about, with we can't process enough of it in that period of time. So that's pretty incredible. I mean, you guys might not know this, but apparently there's word on the street that I think that folks eat a lot of peacock in Asia, right? It's a gallon, just it's, maybe it tastes like chicken.
bird.
Yep, that's what I'm thinking.
They eat strange things. Hence
Well, they eat strange things compared to what we're familiar with. Like, you know me, Dr. Grogan, I never judge anyone's protein source.
Right.
As long as you're not trying to cut off some of me to try for your protein source, I'm good with that.
Nice.
Because it's been so long since Americans were hungry, right? So eat what you like, just don't do it where it hurts me. And slaughter it humanely.
I like that.
So, but all that came to a crashing halt as far as importation, because nothing was going into China when this all hit the beginning of the year, right? And so 1,1500 peacocks, what do you do with that, And so it's incredible, all these indirect impacts that are happening. And then Dr. Grogan, we were talking before, you were talking about the high path avian influenza outbreak recently that also hit the poultry industry. So you guys are not facing just COVID impact alone.
Right. We were fortunate that outbreak was limited to one flock, but it was just a compounded incident when we're already trying to deal with the impacts of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 on our industry. And then, let's have a national animal health emergency while we're at it.
Right.
Luckily, it has been short-lived. And just yesterday, the control zone was lifted and they've been declared free again.
Oh, good. So it's fully, that is fabulous, because 2014 and 15 was enough high-path AI for anybody. Right?
And luckily, our export partners are supposed to recognize down to now the county level because of what happened in 2014 and 2015.
Oh, excellent.
Exports should have just been restricted to just that one county in South Carolina so that we could continue trade. Because again, our trade markets just were reopened to China within the past year. They had been shut because of that avian influenza in 2014, 2015. So our markets opened back up. And that's a huge market for us for what we call paws, especially the chicken feet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so a couple of those things kind of sound like positive things. So let's move to a more positive part of the discussion, ladies.
Let's have some good news.
Let's have some and the good news is, so what are we looking at moving forward? Okay, as everyone's talking about now, how in different places the epi curve, and this is all I'm going to wade into epi only with my little toe, because Dr. Fowler is an epi expert.
Epi queen.
I know, right? And so she could quickly pick the ball up and run with it here. But so I think we're saying that we've kind of have flattened the curve a little bit, at least in most places. And so what are we looking for moving forward now? And as it relates to the food supply, what do we think is going to happen? What if you guys had to guess? I stumped them.
No, I think that I think our industries are adapting to this challenge. All food production sectors are adapting. I think what we will see is, as we have dealt with this initial surge, as you see certain areas start to have cases rise again, then our industries, if they're affected, will learn how to deal with the local outbreaks. And it may impact production on a small, for that particular plant. But I don't think that we're going to see a wide scale breaking of the food chain. Food supply, I think, is going to maintain. We may see, instead of this year being predicted as finally we're going to get great years. I read a thing the dairy prices have been in a slump for 4 years, and they were predicting this was going to be great for them.
Right. Yeah.
No, not so much.
Yeah.
So this will not be a boon year for our industries, but I think we're resilient. I think, we'll figure out how to slow growth. We've had the same discussions on chickens. I've heard they're putting cattle out on grass instead of feeding them in feedlots. We just have to adapt to keep the processes going. And I think that's what we'll see.
And I think the other silver...
Go.
I think the other silver lining is that I hope in a couple of months we'll sit back on this and do kind of some what went well, what didn't. But I think it will give us an opportunity to continue to strengthen our response and preparedness capabilities, because should we get another disease, another widespread disease in any of our ag sectors, I hope this will continue to solidify our already existing relationships within all of the ag industry and with USDA and our state partners, but make sure that all of our plans are in place to help protect us. Hopefully, we'll learn, take the lessons, and apply them for the future.
Well, I think that's not a if we get another one. Would you say, Dr. Fowler? I mean, we're going to have emerging pathogens.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's unpredictable too, right? There are groups that spend millions of dollars trying to predict the next one, identify the different viruses. So that's the hard thing. If we knew when it was coming, we could be prepared. If we knew exactly what it was, what I find fascinating with SARS-CoV-2 is that it's so closely related to the original SARS that we named it SARS-CoV-2.
Right.
But the spread has been so much different. The response has been so different. So I think that's the hard thing with emerging infectious diseases is it depends on how it spreads, how infectious it is. This one's highly infectious. So, but I definitely think, as Lisa said, there's a lot we can learn from it. So if another one comes, we'll have similar, we have similar rules at the state and local levels. So hopefully it won't be quote unquote as bad, but it all depends on what that pathogen is and when it hits and how.
Yeah. And so that's why I say, like, I think being prepared, as Dr. Becton and Dr. Grogan mentioned too, is, I mean, it truly is not a question of if, it's just a question of when. And so we have to be prepared for it. And so another thing that I want to make sure and give an opportunity for you guys to do is, because you guys are kind of like 3 unicorns, veterinarians working in commercial ag and women. And so if you guys could quickly just kind of tell us a little bit about food industry as a job, like as a career for veterinarians, for either those who are about to come out of vet school, what would be like your number one tip or what drew you to the industry? And then, something for folks who are already practicing clinically, but maybe are thinking, I like pigs. I like chickens. Yeah. So Dr. Fowler, can we start with you?
Sure. I think for me, I came to the animal ag world. I grew up in urban towns in New Jersey here.
Right, the urban sprawl.
Yeah, exactly. The urban sprawl, concrete jungle of New Jersey. Yes. I had very little exposure to agriculture, and I kind of came through by way of public health. And I'm really happy in my job. I get to, talk with producers and discuss public health guidelines and help them understand it. So I can still do that public health piece. I can be involved in research and education and outreach. So it's a perfect place for me. So if you're interested in public health, I don't think many public health veterinarians would have thought, oh, let me look up National Pork Board, see if they're hiring. But I'm glad I found it. Actually, a good colleague of mine told me about the job. So I think, there's all sorts of work and industry, and I think people should be open to it and can find a good job. And I'm really happy right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Dr. Becton?
I've been in this industry over 26 years, started out in production, working for a production company. And I did that because I enjoy production agriculture. I wanted to have an impact with the food that we grew. I never did think I was going to work in the pork industry, but I've been in it since I graduated vet school, only because truthfully, me and cattle never got along. I got run over once and said, forget that mess.
No cows for you.
In all seriousness, I do enjoy that side. I've got a master's in food safety. I love the plant operations. And so there's a lot of different careers involved, whether you want to be in live production or if you want to be on the plant side. There's always places to bring your veterinary knowledge, and even some unconventional places like, CDC now or FDA, USDA, because there's a lot of people that are becoming less and less involved in farms. And so there's always going to be a place for us in ag.
Yeah,
definitely.
And Dr. Grogan?
Agreed. I'm probably similar background with Lisa. I actually grew up with cattle, and that's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to be a large animal, James Harriet kind of vet, take care of all things, great and small. But I did an externship with a company that did swine and turkeys in Eastern North Carolina. And I was like, you know what? I enjoy this. Like, it's production ag, but I just really like production agriculture. And I like the problem solving aspects of it. And you're dealing with a huge population. Like, that's really, I was having this conversation today with another poultry vet that works for an integrator. And he was like, this is all population health dynamics. He was like, how come we're not at the table telling people how to figure this out?
Thank you.
So I love the diversity of what we do within agriculture as veterinarians. Like Lisa said, technical service, supporting our industry, allied companies, state labs. Our state diagnostic labs have veterinarians that have, we need those people to diagnose these diseases, but we also have to have our colleagues in private practice help us recognize things that might show up in small herds or small flocks, like the exotic Newcastle in California. That was a small animal vet that caught that.
Right.
So we all have to be partners in this. And now I've kind of found my true passion, which is training the next generation. So I'm back teaching, and I love teaching vet students. They
because some of them probably haven't even seen a commercial poultry operation, right?
They've never been on. No, I showed them
crazy.
Pictures, and they're like, "What?"
It's crazy. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I love that. I truly love that. And so if you're listening out there, and if you're a veterinarian or if you're an animal care professional, and you're thinking, I have an interest in that. There's nothing that says you can't pursue that. And there's nothing wrong with it. And you can be incredibly happy doing it. And so I would encourage everyone, no matter what your interest is, if you've got one, hey, go chase that. And so I love that all three of you were willing to talk about it. Okay, so now comes our game time. Right? It is on. Okay, ladies. So I am going, and you guys can totally play as a team. Okay. So
great.
I'm going to ask you like truth or myth, right?
Okay.
So you guys tell me if it's for real or if it's like that's on the internet. Okay. All right. So we'll start with what I think is probably an easy one. So is the color of my chicken going to predict the color of the egg?
That is a myth. Oh, Heather knows.
Did Heather say she knew?
No, she did this. So the color of the egg can be predicted by the earlobe color of the chicken. Okay. If there is a white sheen to the egg, yes, chickens have ears.
I was going to say, in other news, the chicken has earlobes. So what, could I pierce my chicken's ears? What the heck?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, so the earlobe.
If there's a white sheen to the earlobe, they lay a white egg. If it's red, they lay a brown egg.
Okay, so red earlobes is not an embarrassed chicken.
Not an embarrassed chicken.
It's one that's going to lay a brown egg. Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. So let's see. Here's one that says the U.S. Oh, okay. Well, this is easy. Is the U.S. the top pork producer in the world? Do we produce the most pork? Okay, where are we? Where are we in the rankings?
I think we're like, if you discount the EU, I think we're either third, maybe. I can't remember, Heather. I know China is number one. And then EU comes in behind that only because they're a block.
Right.
And there's Brazil and us, I think. So we're in the top 5 for sure.
Okay, awesome. Were we ever number one for pork?
No, the China has so many more millions of pigs than the U.S. does.
How did you guys let that
any
happen?
Other company.
I thought America was going to be number one. Come on, Heather, Lisa.
We have the best pork. How about that?
Oh, there you go. Yes, we do.
Best bacon.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
And probably one of the most cost-effective too.
Oh, that's true. So here's the other thing: is pork truly the other white meat?
Just had this discussion with my 13-year-old today.
Oh boy.
So funny. No, she's like, I just don't think I'm going to eat red meat. So I'm just letting her, teenagers have these, realizations in life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's like, I don't know. I just don't really like it. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm just letting her go on. And she was like, I'm just going to eat white meat. And I said, okay, well, what are those? And she was like, chicken, maybe fish. And I was like, well, where does pork fall? And she was like, well, I guess that's white meat too. And I was like, oh, okay. Yep.
Oh, okay. Just good to know. Good to know. You guys, Dr. Fowler is still laughing too hard to respond to this. Okay. So we said that we're not the number one pork producers. America's not. But is America the number one poultry producer?
There's always a back and forth with, us and Brazil.
Hey, what is happening in Brazil? You mentioned them with the pork too.
Oh, it's all about economics. They have cheap food. We need grains to feed animals, right?
Yeah.
Efficiently. So they can raise cheap corn in Brazil, and they have cheap. Well, I shouldn't use the word cheap. More cost-effective labor force.
Right. There you go. That's right. Very good.
Yeah.
Dr. Grogan, friends entering politics tomorrow.
No.
That's right.
No.
Okay. So, and my other
And maybe
question
that's the export market. I do think we raise more pounds or something. It's always back and forth.
So
but
basically, I could look at the statistics and somehow I could say we're number one.
right. Yes.
I can say the
Georgia.
same thing
Okay,
with
so
pork.
I do know this. If you took Georgia and separated it out as a country on its own, we would be like number 6 or 7.
Oh,
It's just the state of Georgia. The
I
number
can't
of
do that
chickens
because
we
I'm from
produce.
Texas, and we're the only state that was its own country.
stop.
Like so.
You want it to be your own country.
Okay, so what about potbelly pigs? Do people eat potbelly pigs? I've heard that people
I
eat
hope
potbelly
not.
pigs.
Where?
No?
Well, probably.
If you just want a
probably
small
not.
pork meal? No?
If you want a mini
No.
pork chop.
But is it the same pork
got-
meat?
The answer is probably not no, because the genetics of the pig are different.
What about guinea pigs?
Because that's not
South
even
America.
They do. They eat those
Or
in
they
South
eat
America. Yeah.
They do, but they're not of the Suis species.
Thanks for straightening her out, Lisa.
Ooh, Lisa's on it today. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
dang.
So here's something else. So I'm watching TV and I'm seeing commercials and they say, we're the brand that never uses antibiotics in our chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lord. You had to go there. I'm just saying.
So does anybody put antibiotics in their chickens? I thought you couldn't use them.
Yes. We are allowed to use antibiotics under a veterinary client-patient relationship.
Uh-huh.
And we use antibiotics in a prudent fashion.
But you can't use them as like
disease.
right.
To treat disease.
Only to treat disease.
They
so
can be used to prevent or treat disease.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Good to know.
So
Good
we
to know.
can use antibiotics.
Okay.
There is a push back from our customers, like
Right.
McDonald's, Chick-fil-A,
Right.
whoever, Kroger, whoever.
That they don't want antibiotics.
We don't want you to. We want no antibiotics ever. Or we don't want you using antibiotics of human importance.
Okay, but I would like you to use antibiotics because that's not fair to the chicken.
Agreed. So that is the flip side of the coin, is that you could create a welfare issue if you have a disease that is treatable with an antibiotic.
I know.
And you as a veterinarian, and you've taken an oath, right? To prevent animal suffering. That
yes.
Is
it the same
marketed...
thing in the pork industry, Dr. Fowler? I know you were wanting to break in there.
So yes, we are allowed to use antibiotics for treatment, prevention, control. We train on it in our PQA or Pork Quality Assurance Plus program to make sure that our producers are evaluating each and every use, that veterinarians are involved, and that they're using it responsibly.
Okay, so it's not like they're just going to the feed store and dumping stuff in, because that's the other thing. That's another myth, right?
Can't do that.
Right.
Can't do that. Can't do it. Can't do it. Okay. This has been wonderful, ladies. It's been truly wonderful. And is there anything else that any of the three of you want to be sure that the Candyverse is aware of as it might relate to your industry, your profession, your day-to-day?
Well, I know some of your readership, my goodness. Some of your listeners are other veterinarians, and I just want to encourage them, especially folks that may be small animal that have questions, that you have folks like Dr. Grogan that you can call up I'm telling them to call you. Awesome.
She just passed the book right there.
If you have questions or lean out to the industry, if you have questions about what's going on in the industry, or, we have resources at the National Pork Board on our website, but, as a profession, I would love to see more solidarity and, especially amongst our small animal colleagues, if there is some question or concern about what we talked about today. So hopefully that solves some questions, but if folks have follow-up, I'll be willing to.
That's a great point. So so out in the Candyverse, we like people to be informed. We love for people to have differing opinions, but we really like for those to be informed, differing opinions. And so if you've never stepped foot on a commercial ag property, maybe don't talk so much about it if you've never seen it. Maybe a little of that. Yeah, a little of that. And then any myths that you guys feel like that just need to be busted that I didn't bring up. Any other myths? No?
Well, the biggest one is that people don't think that we're just all mass production and the dreaded word factory farm. Behind every pig, behind every animal, there is a person taking care of that animal. And all of us really, really care about the production and the farmers and the people that take care of our animals and create the food supply. Yeah. And so even though a lot of our detractors don't have a lot of nice terms, you have to think behind every farm, there's a person, a family, people that are lovingly taking care of these animals and giving them the best life they can, knowing that they are still there for our food and food supply. Mm-hmm. So we are people too, and we do eat.
I think that's wonderful. That's a wonderful sentiment. And Dr. Grogan, you were going to say?
That was well said. I think that's part of, I'm sure Lisa can relate in production, like that's part of my favorite parts of my job is actually going to farms and relating to the actual growers themselves and your outreach to producers, Heather, like they genuinely care. Yeah. And that's what I think is probably extra devastating for some of these people. Like I can't imagine a farmer who's got pigs that are, ready to process and this is their livelihood. Mm-hmm. This is what they are passionate about. And they love their farms and, we want to feed the world and we do it in a very responsible manner. And a lot of the things that get said about us, it's just misconceptions and it's just a lot of misinformation.
Little hyperbole. Yeah. And so I would encourage people to do the same thing. So if you have an opinion about stuff like this and you realize, oh my gosh, I've never even seen a commercial farm, get some education. You may still maintain your same opinion.
There's a lot of great videos. I think probably the Pork Board has stuff out, but the National Turkey Federation and the National Chicken Council, we even have Temple Grandin. Like we have famous people talking about how we do things responsibly.
Yeah. So I wonder, where can we go? I know we can go to, what is y'all's website for the National Pork Board?
Pork.org.
Pork
and for COVID.
Pork.org.
Pork.org and then /COVID will give you COVID specific information, COVID-19.
So newshounds, don't run off the road if you're listening to the podcast in your car. We're going to put the links on our episode notes for that. And Dr. Grogan, where would you suggest if they want more information on the poultry industry?
So if you just Google chicken check-in.
Chicken check-in. Yes, I love it.
That's the National Chicken Council. They're harder to find, but there's chicken check and then .in. So it'll give you information. And there's videos, there's stuff on our COVID response.
Awesome.
And you can learn how we're responding as an industry. But there's lots of videos on there, like just a regular normal day on a broiler farm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So fabulous. Ladies, I can't thank you enough for joining us here in the Candyverse today.
This is like a power, house of food industry.
I know.
We need to do something like this more often.
We do. I'm so glad you say
give us like a food animal group.
That's right. That's right. So I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Grogan, because I'm thinking we should have this like chick power. See what I did there? But this group, we should revisit commercial ag issues as they arise. And so I hope that you guys will be happy to join us again in the Candyverse and talk about it so candidly and with such expertise, dispelling the myths, talking about the safety and keeping us safe, keeping the folks that work in our food supply safe, because it is one of the key features of America is that we have the safest food supply on the planet. And we do enjoy it and take it for granted. And I know I do. So I'm going to sign off just so I can go get a snack. Because we've been talking about food supply. So once again, thank you, Dr. Grogan, Dr. Fowler, Dr. Becton, for joining us in the Candyverse. Thank you all for listening. Again, subscribe to Vet Candy at myvetcandy.com. You can follow us on social at myvetcandy. And you can find me at Jen at myvetcandy.com. And Jason, I know you're listening in the basement. And I'll see you on the next episode of In Other News.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.